Meeting.
Have a good evening.
You too. Have a good meeting. Thanks.
Okay, welcome to all. As I play, this is probably our last Zoom meeting. So as I said in the last letter, or one of the last letters I sent out, on our return to wherever it may be, probably the board office, coffee's on me. I will send out notice early enough so that those who want decaf versus regular, I can do the appropriate ordering, and I'll get some donuts at that time from across the street, if nobody objects.
Nobody objects.
Or you could do like Sergio and get the donut holes.
Well, I'm gonna go for the whole thing.
Just kidding.
Okay, let's see what mistake did I make here. No. Where's that share thing? Share screen. Where are you? Here you go. Okay, so we're ready to start. And I thank you all for rejoining this committee. I look forward to working with all of you. As I say, next time would be in person, hopefully, or not, depending upon your opinion. I mean, I'm quite comfortable not having to use my cane to run out to meetings at weird places. But I've gotten spoiled over the last several months. So here we are. So the first item is welcome returning members. And there you see the 5 members who are the committee. Having trouble closing picture. I don't know why. Okay, I'll deal with that later somehow. So as of right now, there are no, I heard there was one board member, new board member named. I didn't ask who it was. And the board is still waiting to know who is coming. And I have no new committee members to welcome. As far as guests, Camelia is here. She has an item she's requested on the agenda, which is under new business. And I'm hoping that everyone, even though it came in late, or I saw it late this afternoon and asked that it be sent out. I don't know if anybody received it.
Yes.
That you'll be able to read it or have read it, so that in addition to Camelia making that presentation, you will have thoughts in mind as to what your opinions are relative to that. Having said that, meeting is now called to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. The last, where am I? Oh, these are the minutes. Are there any comments about the minutes?
Do you mind scrolling down, Marty? I actually don't remember. It's been a while. Brings back memories.
The wordsmithing, yes. And then discussion of guidelines for the conduct of meetings, which was approved, well, not approved, but was presented to the board last June, I guess. The question, and we'll come up with it again, of course, Steve raised it with me this afternoon. Excuse me. And I want to touch on it, the whole idea of hybrid. I was down at the board office. When was that? Last week, and got a walkthrough on how the hybrid model would work from sitting in the office. I need to apologize for my earlier resistance, thinking that this was going to be extremely difficult and highly technical. And as I explained to Pablo, I was really upset because it seemed very easy. And so those who just didn't take the chairs who didn't take it yet or experienced yet, basically it's exactly the same as Zoom. Wherever we are, tomorrow night we'll be in the at the Y. They went to set up. If you have not been in the office lately, they put in a giant screen. The giant screen may make it easier to see other people, as pointed out by David, on, or reminding us, David, on at the executive meeting, when you are on Zoom, hybrid model, whichever, and you're not physically present at the meeting, your camera must be on at all times. Go to the bathroom, the camera still stays on. But you, those who like putting on a fake screen for whatever purpose, that's not allowed if you're a hybrid member. Review of the spreadsheet.
Marty, if I may,
Go ahead, David.
I just want to say also that, and I think you experienced this last week, and I did too. When most of our committee meetings will be held in the office, and it really won't feel any different from our meetings 3 years ago, because you'll be sitting in the long room with, I think, a physically smaller table so you can get around more easily, and there'll be the huge computer screen, as you mentioned, up on the wall. It's just that there will be a camera and a microphone operating. But the look and feel for those of us who will be in the conference room will really not be any different than it was 3 years ago.
Correct. The only issue, again, I mean, basically, I put a lot of money into the system. I just wish they had spent a little money on Windows. But there's a number of air fresheners in the room to clear the air while we're in there. But basically, it's the same as sitting at your own Zoom, except now we're going to share a desk and all look at the same monitor at the same time.
So
Go ahead.
Marty, I didn't go to, obviously I haven't gone for the training yet. What are we doing for the meetings where, like the board meeting on Tuesday? Are we still providing the board office to be open? I'm guessing it's broadcasting from the board office still?
No, it's my impression, based on what Pablo said, they spent time this week setting up the Y. So the screen will be there and will function out of the Y. How it's being done physically, I do not know, but it's as complicated as I thought it was. What we're basically talking about is, instead of sitting by yourself, as I'm doing right now, with a computer and Zoom access, this will be the whole room watching the same monitor, if they so choose.
And it is quite conceivable there'll be hiccups. You know, the first time out, we'll be running off of Wi-Fi, the Riverdale Y's Wi-Fi, to broadcast via Zoom, and people will call into Zoom via that Wi-Fi, and there will be a large screen in the room, which I think we probably in the past have displayed, PowerPoints and whatnot on, but that will be our Zoom screen. And so people the community is welcome to attend at the Y or call in via Zoom. And that's really about it. We're just using the Y's Wi-Fi. Most of the committee meetings will be held in the conference room, and we will Zoom via Wi-Fi, like we were describing a few minutes ago. A few of the larger committees going to other sites like Parks in 2 weeks will be at the Van Cortlandt Golf Course, and we got to figure out how to. I think they're still working on trying to figure out how to do the Wi-Fi hotspot to upload, to Zoom from the golf house. That's the only, that and the TNT at St. Margaret's are the only ones that there's not yet a firm grip on how it will work. But there probably will be hiccups, just like how we approached Zoom 2.5 years ago. We didn't know that Zoom would work. We hoped, and I think it worked out quite well, but we didn't know.
Well, as Eric
David?
Dinowitz, as Eric Dinowitz complained, when we had him as a guest speaker, he was at the Y, and the Y hotspot was somewhat touchy.
Okay.
Sylvia?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say, Marty. I
I'm
was
sorry
going to
that-
bring that up.
I'm just curious, what about the broadcast part of it? In other words, right now,
Mhm.
in front of my computer, I have the little camera clipped to the top. The view is going to be a wide angle view of the people assembled in the committee room? What is
Committee
that?
room, the way it's set up, it's a rectangle. On one end of the rectangle is where the chair always, at a meeting, always sat. And at the other end of the rectangle, up on the wall, is a much larger monitor, TV screen.
So there'll be a camera in that and it'll take a picture. of
Yes.
the
That's
table.
right.
There's a
And
camera
we've had that-
microphone, the camera microphone clipped, just like yours, on top of that screen.
I see. And
Which,
what about the last question I have is, when you're at a remote location, whether that's, and I don't mean the participants, I mean the whole, the main in-person meeting. When you're at a location like the Y or upstairs, I hope we can continue to use the facility immediately upstairs.
We haven't been for a couple of years.
I don't think they want us back, but at the Y, there probably will be sort of a fisheye lens camera that I think will be aimed primarily at us as board members in the meeting in that U shape of tables. And I think for the community to get involved, they probably would have to, at least like, for example, those who speak beforehand will probably have to walk up to us. Again, this is a technical thing. We're going to have to see how it works out, see how visible and audible it all is.
So the board's already purchased that camera.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Marty, I guess just from what I'm hearing, and I don't know if you've seen it or not, the audio is, I guess, my bigger concern on it. I mean, video, obviously, if you don't get the best view of the board, so what? But I guess, and I don't know what microphones the board office bought. Well, I shouldn't say that, I saw one, but I don't necessarily know it's the right thing for this. Did they discuss that with you, how audio is going to be handled throughout the board in recording this?
Well, the
Even in the
system,
committee room, yeah.
speaker system is hooked up to the monitor somehow. I really didn't look at that. I sat somewhere toward the closer end to the monitor when
Yep.
Pablo showed me how and where, and the entire table is visible, regardless of where you sit at the table.
Yeah. The video is
on
not so much, it's
Wednesday-
the audio for me. And
On
I think the
Wednesday,
audio,
I went to the office and into the conference room and set up a fake meeting. And Kira was in with me. I had Pablo go out, close the door, zoom in from his desktop, and I dialed in from my mobile phone, and everything was fine. And in fact, actually, the audio was so good that there was a echo reverb because of my phone being inside where the microphone is. So certainly in the conference room, I think the audio will be fine. And if I remember correctly, we had those gray Plyotronic or something, I forget the name of it, speaker phones with the little extensions that could go onto the other tables. So I think we should be okay with that as well. And if not, we will adapt. And I think that Laura will struck the meeting by saying, this is our first time out of the gate. We expect some hinks or hitches in the process. Please bear with us. And I think, like Zoom, people will understand.
Soup is still in the tasting, and we'll try and taste it, Dan, tomorrow night.
Yep. Okay.
Except we'll be in the main room, and our audio will probably be listening to each other as opposed to a
Yeah.
monitor.
Yeah.
So
Yep,
we'll
yep.
have to get-
Okay, thanks, Marty.
I don't like the word, but we'll have to get feedback from other people.
Yep, yep, yep.
Agreed.
So going through again, Steve, have I reminded you now what was the discussion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so these are the minutes. I accept the motion to accept them. Anybody?
Motion
Motion.
to accept.
Motion made, two motions to accept. So I'll count one as a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Minutes approved. Okay, next. Chairperson's report. I don't know if any of you have read it. I admit I didn't read it in full until this past week. Scree handed out a draft report on June 28th. It was quite voluminous and frankly, it represented the scholarship on their part, the work they had done. If you have not looked at it, I strongly recommend that you do, particularly the work done by Margaret in putting together a map which is designed to show over the course of 5 years, I think, the budget requests we have made and the budget requests that were completed and where and how this all plays out geographically. The idea of equity, did it all go in one neighborhood or was it dispersed? And what is the status? It's an excellent piece of work. So again, I recommend that you look at it if you haven't. I did notice some things that I had problems with. I wrote them a letter. Probably should have sent you copies and I will. But two things I want to share. Number one is that on the first page of the report, the committee identified several contemporary issues or activities that have taken place and indicating how they were positive or negative with respect to the concept of equity. I was shaken, I don't know, shaken is the wrong word. I was concerned that one item specifically made disparaging remarks about the Republican Party. I'm not asking anyone for their opinion, but based on the presentation we had from the COIB, the idea of identifying a political person or a political party puts us into politics. And so I recommend that they review that so that it's not in violation of COIB. Second issue, is there a comment? The second issue I was concerned about is the way it is written. They have an idea in which they've done demographics. They've studied the demographics of the Bronx and the city and of the community board and the concern of equity. And the committee is that the committee board reflect the population of the board in general. And so they suggested that after communication with the chairs of the various committees, it implies that they, as a screen committee, would then contact the borough president, the mayor, and city agencies. I asked them to review that too. So that's on the report. Secondly, on the screen, they had a great presentation from the Racial Equity Commission that the mayor had set up, I guess, over the last year. And they have come up with 3 ballot issues that will be on the ballot come this November. And they were looking, I won't use the word support because they were aware, as we are aware, that once there's an issue that's on the ballot, we can discuss it, but we can't take positions. And I reference back to the charter revision which created term limits for community board members. Well, we could discuss it, we couldn't take positions. And the law office was very clear on that. So I just reminded them of that. One of the issues that was concerned about and asked, they want to establish, the commission wants to establish a mechanism through which one can establish what the actual cost of living is to live in New York. They were not clear, this person who made the presentation was not clear on how that number, how that computation would be used once it's established. I asked whether or not in any way this could be referenced to the AMI, which the land use is very much concerned about, trying to assist and support the concept of affordable housing. And if the average medium income is across Westchester, Queens, Bronx, then the number they come up with is not, we believe is not extremely helpful. Apparently at this point, there is no intended correlation between the cost of living in New York and the federal government's AMI. So I'm want to press them if possible to make, we can't take a position, but find out how they plan to calculate and use that number. Any thoughts, comments? Amelia, did I report correctly?
Yes, sir, you reported absolutely correctly. I'm just wondering if how to say, or the only one thing I would have a small comment is when you said that on the previous item that you raised that somehow it was implied that SCRE would go to the mayor's office of the Bronx Borough President with the observations as far as parallel between the committee board composition and the actual general population. I'm sorry if that was kind of the message conveyed. I think that was probably just an editing issue because, as you may remember, maybe you were not on that screen meeting last year when we were discussing a resolution to be put forward to full board that was making these comparisons, but we decided to withdraw it. So I just wonder if it was just an editing thing and just wanted to mention that. But thanks for flagging it because we do need to clarify and just want to share with the other members that we did also identify some issues for further correction that may have been valid and kind of hot at the time that the first report came through, which was 2 years ago, that we need to address during this year to make the tone a little bit more moderate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The second thing is, Steve, you want to raise your question, or have I answered you in the letter I wrote back?
I went back to the text of the guidance that was provided under the open meetings law, and the way that our resolution reads is just exactly, accurately reflects that. So the bottom line for me was, just very briefly, just to let the rest of the committee know, in case anyone else thinks this is a problem, in retrospect, this may not be. If someone is granted an exemption for extraordinary circumstances and is permitted, a member of a committee or a member of the board at a full board meeting is permitted to join a physical meeting from a remote location via Zoom, they can attend. And as Marty mentioned earlier, they have to be on camera all the time, but they do not count in assembling a quorum rather. And taken on its own, that makes sense. I understand that. I don't think that that's ambiguous or confusing. It goes on to say that they are able to vote as if they were in person. And it occurred to me that there might need to be a clarification that there is a difference between not being counted for a quorum and being included in the total for purposes of calculating or assessing a majority. But it may well be that the concept of including the number of people voting in a total in any vote is not a quorum, so there's no confusion there. And I don't know, Marty, if you agree with that latter analysis, but I think that was my mistake. I was equating totaling up the number of votes when assessing whether a majority has carried, a vote, a negative or positive, with a quorum. And I don't think they're the same thing.
Well, the way I see it, based on the earlier research, is that the critical question is an on or off switch. Do you have a quorum? Now, you have a quorum because the number of people who are present represents a majority of the membership. So, so the question is not how many are hybrid, but if the people who are physically present make up a quorum, you have a meeting. Once you have that, the people who may vote hybrid, the total number count includes those who are voting hybrid. So it doesn't change the quorum number. It's just an on-off switch. There's no meeting until there's a quorum.
I think that's correct. That's my understanding. I don't think we have a problem or a need for clarification.
My problem is that the chair of the board has not authorized anyone, including us, to define what a valid excuse is and who approves a valid excuse. I don't know what the process is. As I indicated to Steve, and I share here, I plan to be away for 10 days in October. Is being on vacation, being away, a valid excuse to enable me to be there by hybrid? I don't know the answer.
I mean, the best that we can do now, I think, is to look at the guidance that's provided under Chapter 56 of the laws of 2022. And extraordinary circumstances usually involves something unexpected. So if you're
Well,
planning to be away, that's like having a conflict in your schedule where you have to be in two places at once, you have to choose. That wouldn't suffice because it's not unexpected. If
My answer to you on that
Yeah.
is that the session I attended via Zoom, led by the borough president's office, when that question of vacation came up, they turned around and says it's for your board to decide.
Mhm.
So there is no single there are a number of there are a number of examples in the law, but it then becomes vague. And if it comes back in our laps to decide what is or isn't, somebody has to make a decision, and I don't know who those persons are. Anything else on this?
No, but perhaps it's worth a discussion in LRE, at a future meeting.
Okay, well, by that time, there've been 2 or 3 cycles of board meetings in which
Yep.
somebody did or didn't decide that's a good excuse.
Well, presumably it's going on as we speak, right? Presumably people are making a request to Laura or to the board office for that designation for tomorrow.
Well, the fact is, I don't know. You may be right. They may have agreed to some hybrids. They may have disagreed on some hybrids. I don't know what the ground rules are. It's important they be established somewhere. So
Maybe
Dan,
next month we could, maybe next month we can begin the conversation here.
I think the question of outdoor cafes, and I think this too, never landed in any one committee to talk about. So maybe I'll press for that tomorrow.
I mean, it could also be the kind of thing that the executive committee considers as well. But I think the LRE could make a contribution. I think my prediction is that because there are a certain number of members of the board who have never experienced the board other than via Zoom, as well as lots of members like myself who've become very, used to the convenience of being able to keep working at my office and joining a meeting without getting on 2 subways. I think what we may find is that we're gonna lack quorums right and left in the coming month. Unless there's, some sort of an exception rule for an extraordinary circumstance that may not be so extraordinary, but that's just my prediction.
I'm just saying that somebody needs to be given the authority is the wrong word, to come up with some kind of guidelines for its use. Because every board member should know. So if I say I'll be out of town for religious observance and you turn me down and someone says it's my daughter's birthday, I want to be a hybrid, and that gets approved, I don't know what the guidelines are. I use the word again. I don't know what the guidelines are to say that makes sense or that doesn't make sense.
Well, we have to start with the premise of our original appointments, which are, we're expected to attend 10 board meetings a year, plus, most, if not all, of your 2 committees meetings. People will have to decide whether they want to live up to that, but that is our responsibility. We were given a reprieve of sorts for 2.5 years, but that has ended.
But the issue still is under what conditions and by whom do we our request granted or not granted?
I understand that. I'm just saying that we have to start with the premise that everybody must attend in person. And
I
then
appreciate that
continue
premise.
to talk about, and probably next month would be the right spot, about how to deal with excuses and permissions, etc.
I mean, each board is required to develop written procedures on for this very purpose. And that would seem to be normally the bailiwick of law, rules, and ethics to make a proposal, just like we draft additions to the ethical guidance manual or
Okay,
procedures for running a meeting. I mean, I don't see, it's not something perhaps that we relish because there isn't a lot of guidance except that one paragraph in the questions and answers, but we certainly could fashion something and submit it to the officers or the exec, at least in the
Oh.
first instance.
I will touch base with Laura tomorrow and get some direction or lack thereof. Next item on the agenda was recommended by Sergio. Sergio saw an article, he shared it. I shared it with you. And the real question is, this New York Coalition Open Government has been beating up on counties throughout the state to find out if there was any, how many of the counties had rules and regulations concerning, actually, in this case, it's more legislators than community board members, but how many of them had rules, regulations concerning the use by legislators of private email usage. And the bottom line becomes, and you can read it at your leisure, I hope you did, but I have this answer here from Kira. Okay, that's Kira's response.
Marty,
It
can
was
you tell
not
us what that
possible
response is?
because to agency resources. I don't get that.
I'm sorry,
Was-
Marty, what was the question and what was the answer? I can't read the screen.
Okay, the question is
That
whether
was
or not,
presented. No,
as,
that was presented to, I'm guessing it was Committee on Open Government?
no, actually, it was just presented, it was a survey done by this civic organization, which wanted to know whether or not there was a policy. They were concerned, and I'm sure we are concerned, that under the open meetings law, we have to share we may be requested to share the emails that we have sent out concerning our operations on the community board, or in the case, the legislatures in the various counties. The question has come up before, and I think the first one to make an issue on our side, was Rosemary, who found it highly inconvenient to what do you call it, to isolate board business from personal business if you just downloaded her emails. And so she created, and others have done that since, created a, even it's on their own sites, they've created an email address specifically for board issues. So if ever came up into the advance and in the future that somebody or some entity wanted to see what you did in respect to a committee, to whatever, then you have them all isolated and you say, here they are. I frankly have no answer other than what is, I think, prudent, is that we recommend to every board member, they create an address specifically for CB business.
Marty, I guess what I was asking was, you said Kira had an answer to the question. Who was Kira answering?
This inquiry is after Sergio's message came in. I guess she was putting out this response to any and everyone who got copies of Sergio's, directly got copies of Sergio's article, the article he shared. So she's saying here that she had researched it before because it had come up before. And if you're thinking that the city is going to provide all of us with specific .gov email addresses, it's not going to happen. As she says here, there are 600 plus community board members. So the recommendation, and I'm just sharing the recommendation, as I will tomorrow night, that beginning now, if you haven't already done so, create a new email address specifically for CB business.
And we can do that ourselves, Marty? We don't have to have anything from the office?
No, entirely on your own,
Uh-huh.
whichever you
No,
have.
Sylvia,
Most services provide you the opportunity to create more than one email address. Who wanted to speak?
that was me, Marty. And Sylvia, I was just going to say, I think it was like in my first year on the board, I created dpatternacb8@gmail.com. And I've just been using that. All I did was, do an email at CB8 to it. And that's what I use for board business.
Uh-huh. Well, I have everything on one, so it's time for me to change.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't want to get political. Please forgive me for sounding political, but when Hillary was challenged on the server that she had, she expressed that most of the emails on her server were preparations for her daughter's wedding. End of discussion. David?
Yeah, I've not seen this before, Sergio or Kira or Tom's response. If you could distribute that would be helpful. Yeah, this is generally news for me. And a question it begs for me is I've always used my personal one to the degree that we know, how far can a FOIL go to us individually? In other words, if there's an issue about X, would I be required to provide all my emails about X? Or is it possible I could be questioned or even subpoenaed to show all of my email inbox and sent outbox?
You're now far above my ability to respond. Dan may have a better answer than I do, but basically, depending upon who the inquiry is coming from and what they are seeking, the question becomes, if that ever were to happen, and you start screening what they get and what they don't get, that could create a problem.
Well,
Dan, any legal sense? Steve, any legal sense?
yeah, I know a fair amount about FOIL and FOIA, more about FOIA, the federal statute, but people have to do the best that they can. No one is ever going to be able to ask for all of your personal email, because that's just not the way it works. If you were in a lawsuit, someone could make all sorts of broad requests, but we're talking about freedom of information, and someone has to write an intelligible request that's reasonably, limited to the subject matter of interest. And if it's not, then you just ignore it. And then they have to come back and do the best they can until they get a, righter. And if there's a complete disconnect, then they go to court. But the request would most likely be made to the board itself. And then since members compose the board, they would, if they were using their personal email, and this applies to me, they would have to go through their email and do the best they could to search for things like the Ray line or other keywords, and within the limits of Outlook search functions, and do a little doc review. But no one's going to be able to ask for all of your personal email. Nope. And it's up to you what you provide in the first instance.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you, Steve.
Sure.
Again, the question here is the heads up, this potentially might happen. I haven't done it yet, but I will create a CB address and start
Yeah, I'm gonna
using
think
it.
about it too.
Okay, that sounds like fun. I sent you a copy of the CYB Ethical Times. I don't know how often they put it out. I don't always receive them. This particular edition was focused on receiving gifts. We don't, as far as I know, tend to get gifts as civic servants. As a teacher, sometimes I got gifts, but it's something to be concerned about. And so I just bring it to your attention. Beyond that, there's nothing to discuss unless something caught your fancy as you read it. And then there were 4, they called it enforcement cases. Public health advisor on 6 occasions communicated on behalf of his employer for a summer camp to try and change regulations concerning summer camps. And therefore, he crossed the line between public service and for-profit activity. He was asked, I don't know the word asked, he was required to pay a fine of $3,500. Sometimes I find these damages they request to be not scary as much as these people got off easy. Diesel auto mechanic wanted to become a shop steward. The job of a shop steward pays, and he sent out email on the Department of Correction website equipment, and that's a violation right there. But they didn't ask him for anything due to the link between his union. I don't know if they were afraid of the union or what have you. Confidential information, principal administrative associate of HRA was checking the records on behalf of her close family and even on herself. And the fine was waived because, where's that line? She agreed to resign. So that was satisfactory. And a social worker who, on city time, working with a student, went to hearings to support the student, to help the student, So in effect, the city was paying for twice for this guy to be at work, which he wasn't. He was at hearings with a private student, private patient, and he ended up paying a $3,000 fine. And this, I don't understand at all. Those of you who are more savvy on computer than I am, but somehow the government has now decided to join TikTok and have fun with that, if that makes you happy. Okay, now for the fun part. Let me see if I can get this done correctly, which I always mess up. Come on, where are you? Where are you? Okay, it's always fun to go through this. And if anyone wants to do it, it's the same website. You can go on there your own, and perhaps you should or shouldn't. And as you know, the number of columns is interesting. So what I've done here, this is the second spreadsheet. I sent you both copies. The first one is every one of the items that were being considered by the city council. The numbers on the right-hand column are for my benefit. Those were the number lines when I first set up the spreadsheet, and I sent that to you. The second column is file number, law number if it was passed, the type of activity, the status, the committee is considering it, the name of the prime sponsor, and the color code here you see brownish. I have no particular reason to pick any one in particular, just whatever fancy at the time. So this color, if you see that, or further here and further on, that was a prime sponsor, was Carmen De La Rosa. And so those are highlighted throughout, as are the other two city council members who represent us. And finally, or next to finally, I set it up so that what you have here is the definition, the explanation as provided by the city council as to what this intro is concerned about. In the last column, I put a red just for my benefit, and I sent this to you too. Actually, these two should be red also. Because, come on, because I put it down if they were sponsored by one of our representatives. So just looking at these briefly, I put in my letter, the fact that I thought it was interesting doesn't mean that you had to think it was interesting. And I may have passed a lot of very important ones, so I recommend that you go back and look at the full chart. But these I thought interested me, and I thought I'd share them with you. And this does not reflect whether I agree or disagree, just that I thought it was interesting. So local law to amend administrative code in relation to New York City agencies policies regarding work-related communication during non-working hours. Strikes me this is might be invasive, but who knows? Jumping off our last conversation. Amend the city charter, and again, I love how they're ready to amend the city charter when it took so much effort and time to get a city charter passed. And Zoom, every one of these has amending the charter. Evaluation and expansion of diverse recruitment, and a lot of those, the question of diversity, the fire department, number of agencies. They want to do studies to make sure they are diverse. Now, 11, no, line number 6 here. Row number 6 shouldn't be read. Next one should, and that's because one of our representatives, this is Carmen De La Rosa, wants to make sure that Wendy's is part of the fair food program and support farm workers' human rights. Down, requiring nightlife establishments to post signage informing patrons about harassment and to train employees about harassment among patrons. Somehow, I don't know, obviously it's important. It just strikes me that like the course we have to take on sexual harassment, which in principle I think is a good idea, but they could do a far better job of putting that course together. Personally, we get in trouble for saying that. Amend the administrative code requiring the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection report on public use of the department's financial empowerment centers and student distress in the city. And there's another one coming up where apparently there are agencies that are charging students for help and support, which is paid for by the federal government. So these people are double dipping and cheating students. Local law to amend on the sale and possession of catalytic converters, since so many are stolen in this area. Just thought it was interesting. Local law was the next red one. And this color represents, okay, still Carmen De La Rosa. No, what did I do here? Yeah, Carmen De La Rosa. Amend.
Well, Marty, I think we can review your highlightings on our own.
All right, it's fine with me.
But I would,
Ones I found most interesting later on is that I don't think it's Carmen, it's our other representative. I'll find it at the end. And that I imagine it's tied in to what do you call it? Congestion parking, congestion
pricing.
congestion
Yeah,
pricing.
for parking permits for Upper Manhattan.
And also one for Elmhurst. The
Oh, yeah.
second.
Yeah.
I find that interesting. There's a big article in today's Times that congestion parking, among the other things, pricing, whatever else it might be doing, it's also going to create a much greater problem on the Cross Bronx Expressway, people living nearby. There's already the highest level of asthma and lung conditions in the entire city. The increase in traffic that congestion pricing is predicted to cause is make life even more miserable for the people living there.
Yep.
There is later on a piece about the what do you call it? The visitation of purchase with respect to the city.
Yeah,
council.
that's line 141. That's the one I wanted to talk about.
Okay, so we'll get there quickly. There are a number of education issues, Sylvia, that I think you ought to look into, which some I found interesting and some I found disturbing. Interesting, Sylvia, at a meeting last year, I forget what month, but you made a statement in support of the need and presence of security personnel at the schools. And you got feedback and lip from people the whole idea of a person in blue is dangerous and shouldn't be in the schools at all. And
Right.
yes, I'm fascinated that our chancellor is now pushing for more security guards in the school. And it's obviously times have changed, but when I worked in the school, my wife says exactly the same thing. Security guard was part of the personnel, working hand in hand. And if you walk into a school, I can imagine almost any time, you'll find lots of kids who hang around the security guards and they become friends. And it's another person in the building, adult in the building, who can be of extreme importance if an issue ever arises and there's someone that this student may feel the ability to confide with. There is something here which I was troubled with. I'm troubled in general with the fact I want to start, oh, here's one of interest. Our representatives in the city council want to make it expedite the process for FOIL requests for journalists. I don't know what's prompting this. I think in our case, we respond as appropriate, and it's with great difficulty to get what they request and get it out. So to make it easier for them, makes it more difficult for us. But one, and I'll move right down to get to the one that David's concerned about.
141.
Okay, before I do that, and this gray here is what Eric is requesting. I found this interesting with all the stupidity the last couple of years about the people buying their kids' way into college seats, which the kids didn't deserve. And yet I've always wondered why no one was concerned about legacy preferences. There were kids getting in all the time. If your parents went to the school, you have a much better chance of getting in, regardless of scores or whatever else. So the people who went to jail for doing exactly the same thing bothered me. And I don't want to look for it, Sylvia. I think you should. They want to expand the sexual education K to 12 in the city. And I'm frankly personally distressed that that kids K to 3 are being asked to consider things that they have no idea what they're about. And so I'd be curious what they're asking for. They say federal guidelines, but I have no idea what that means. And to get 154, you said?
141.
Well, too bad I can't count. No, oh, wait. This way,
You were just there. No, the very left margin, line 141, row 141.
oh, okay, on the
You were just
spreadsheet,
there.
on the spreadsheet. Not
Yeah.
the, okay, not the
It-
number that I
Just
gave it.
overshot.
141.
Yeah, 588 in column A.
Okay, this is the one.
Is
on,
that from Eric?
No, it's from Salamanca.
I think he's chair of the committee. So this doesn't tell us very much. And the education committee and land use committees are both be looking into having school construction authority come back. I think there's a hearing scheduled for September 29th. At this point, no one seems to know if or when SCA will actually show up. So, and on ULURP, Sylvia was correct when she pointed out at the executive committee, the resolution before us, the request made to us was yes or no, do you want a school? Nothing about what the school looks like, what
They had no
the,
plan.
what the catchment area is, how many students would attend. We know nothing other than, yeah, we'd like to have a school. I think the word used at the executive committee, probably from Chuck, is we got snookered. For those who weren't there and not aware, Visitation Church had a square block of property. The first we heard from SCA is that the diocese would not sell to the Board of Ed. And what we learned from the developer of the new apartment house to go up is that hand in hand, there was a deal made between SCA and Spears as to how much percentage of the property each would get, and they purchased it together, the same pool of money. We just don't know. We know what was presented to us is an enormous building, which seems supersized. And the school, which we hope to get, really provides little space, almost no accoutrements. There's no schoolyard. Anything, they say there's now going to be a green space and school and yard on the roof of the building. We know as much now or less than we thought we knew when that first presentation was made.
That's true.
You want to add anything?
Marty, it's Dan. Just briefly, I mean, we're reporting now that, this resolution was passed at the city council. I mean, the way this works, there must have been a subcommittee meeting probably a couple days before this, and then the land use committee adopted it on whatever date this is. And I don't know where it was, with our board knowing about these hearings, but we probably should have been given notice about this hearing at some level from our board. And I don't know if our board had notice about it or not, but I related to the mayor's office of contract services. I mean, I think we got at least 3 emails about that when that meeting was going to be, with explicit directions on how to log in and everything. And we have a site plan here for a school in Kingsbridge. I mean, I certainly didn't know when the hearing on this was going to be, and I don't think any word went out on this at all. And I don't know, I guess I just find it troubling with everything going on with this project.
Well,
And I
as I said at exec last week, I think this is a case where, I don't know how, but we should, try to leverage our electeds as much as possible. I mean, given that Jeffrey and Jeff were able to come up with a state law to prevent a medical arts building on Riverdale Avenue 3 or 4 years ago, I think they should be able to find a way of pulling another rabbit out of the hat to address this. This is a terrible plan. It should either be a residence or a school, but not both.
In the old days, that whole piece of land would be a school.
Yeah, I think it would be quite a nice school space, but not on what I thought was a half of the property. And then looking at the diagrams we saw last week, it looks like a quarter to a third of the property. I just think that's ludicrous.
I think you're overestimating.
You think it's less than a quarter?
I think it's less than a quarter.
Yes, absolutely,
Wow.
based on that drawing.
Okay.
So
Well,
what hap-
even at half, I thought it was too small. So anything less than that is just silly. Well, like I said, what SCA showed us was that they were going to have a 2,500 square foot, sort of recess or recreation area. That's a basketball court for 700 students.
And that basketball court is only for early childhood.
But
Many
let's
And
keep
that's
in
only
mind,
on an easement.
Right.
Many schools have separate schoolyards that come out of the classroom so that kids can have outdoor activity, but it's exclusively the younger grades that use it. So to use the term, we got snookered. It isn't over yet, but I don't know. School Construction Authority is not known for being, everything DOT is bad. School construction has always been bad. And this is no different. I'm willing to bet, Sylvia, correct me if I'm wrong, where this month is the time for consultations. Board of Ed, to my knowledge, never attends these meetings.
No,
So
they
have-
don't.
And School Construction Authority, I think, also has a slot, never attends.
But they do have a slot.
They do have a slot, but they don't
They
come.
do have a slot, but they don't come. Hmm? And if they come, they don't have answers.
How
As they
convenient.
had done when we spoke at your meeting. Dave? Okay, so having had all of this fun,
Marty?
Yep.
Go all the way to the top, if you will, please. And maybe go a little bit to the left, a column or two at the top. Okay. You and I can talk about this offline. Go all the way to the top, please. Okay, you see type status committee, et cetera. There's a
Correct.
way of what's called freezing the headings. And you and I can talk about it offline, but you can make it so that only the content rows rotate, so you know what column you're looking at. But we'll talk about it offline.
I know how to do that. I didn't think, I mean, my concern was the title column. But I can do that and then.
Yeah,
shift it.
frankly, it's useful to know what column you're looking at, because introduction committee, council member sponsors don't necessarily mean anything if you don't, the data doesn't mean anything if you don't have the title above it.
Okay,
All right, thank you, Marty. I appreciate that.
okay, now I think, where am I? One more time. Okay, so we did legislative spreadsheet. Is there any old business? Under new business, in a moment, I will turn the podium, over to,
Give me a-
Amelia. I'm getting older by the minute. The earlier part of the conversation that I was privy to online was focused on the wrong part. Section 2, under committees on our bylaws, Article 6. And we're going to come back to that. But the discussion here initially was the question of removing someone from the role of a committee. That is not the issue before us. Camelia will talk about it. The issue before us is our bylaws say specifically, chairperson in consultation with the chairperson of the board shall determine the size and membership of each committee. With that, Camelia, you want to address your issue?
Yes, thank you, Marty. Let me restate exactly what Marty said. This is not a question about section 6 of Article 6 of the bylaws, which is removal of a member during proceedings because of absenteeism essentially or for good cause. So that's not about that. This is about Article 6, Section 2, which does provide a chair of a committee the ability to limit the size of the committee, which was how a certain action was justified before the beginning of this September session of the community board. So I presented this in executive, and I will actually read the way they put in the minutes because they just sent it today and it's quite short and clear. CTPL was brought up an issue on SCRI and general equity. Chairs have the ability to limit the size of their committees. There may be cases where people may be excluded by this mechanism. There is not clarity in our bylaws about how that choice would take place, and that might open us to claims of favoritism or bias. I'm suggesting an amendment to bylaws so that the process of selecting membership in cases when chair limits size is transparent, randomized, and anonymous. So essentially, I'm proposing a sentence to be added to section 2, Article 6 of the bylaws, sentence which I highlighted in green in a draft resolution that I sent to Marty and to the officers. The sentence I'm suggesting comes immediately following the sentence, the committee chairpersons in consultation with the chairperson of the board shall determine the size and membership for each committee. And the sentence I'm suggesting is, following decision of a committee chair to limit the size of a committee in a situation of oversubscription, committee membership shall be determined by using an equitable, objective, transparent, and randomized process, lottery, administered under the supervision of the board chair. To make it extremely simple, if I am a chair and I decide I want my committee to be 5 people, but then 2 other people want to join, I should not have the absolute freedom in selecting the people, how to say, that displease me most or that I dislike for whatever reason. If I decide, and I'm entitled to decide as a chair, to limit my committee to 5, then we would sort of have in a hat names of everyone that wanted to join the committee, and the board chair would have a system basically pick out of the hat the names of the 2 members that will not join the committee, versus just essentially accepting a chair's individual preferences in board members. I do know that, and I'm counting on it. I know this is a very unusual situation. And in the 2 whereases that I put to my draft resolution, I indicated sort of specific instances that apply to the case sort of on the table. I'm very willing to remove those. It's an instance where on an email of August 28th, written communication from the board chair indicated her support for a committee chair, quote unquote, discretion to determine membership. Such discretion is never mentioned in the bylaws. And it's another, whereas where again, I'm willing to remove for the sake of sort of generability. Well, you understand what I'm saying, not to have this as an individual case, but a general conversation on another email that was followed on September 1st, where a chair specifically indicated the case that we are discussing, which is his decision to reduce the size of a committee, decision that he's absolutely entitled to do as per bylaws. So all I'm saying is just to have in situations of oversubscription of a committee based on a chair deliberately imposing a number of members, to have a system in place where the people sort of that don't make it are being selected, and system that would be managed by the board chair. I'm not a lawyer. I do believe that this is, and again, I'm absolutely willing to open it to all of your sort of input and drafting and rewording and everything you need to do to this. But I do feel like in the current context, the issue of equity is highly relevant. We cannot have a person's quote unquote discretion accept or reject people. We are all, absolutely all board members are equally appointed and have rights to choose their committees. And if, again, our committee is to be limited, there should be a equitable system of managing that. Thank you.
First, I need to apologize. I thought I had put Cornelia's information in the document I'm using. Apparently I didn't, so I'm sorry about it.
But we did all receive hers this afternoon. So
Yes,
we're aware.
yeah, I know that, and I sent something out also, which I hope you got. But I thought I had done it, so it'd been easier if I had Cornelia's wording, whereas on the screen for you.
If
What I would
you,
like,
yeah, sorry, Martin, just a suggestion. If maybe you would, if David has it from his email, or I can open it on mine, if you would make us something,
Yeah.
co-host, then David,
Mine is open.
excellent. If you could make David co-host, he would be able to share screen and then do any edits that you consider useful.
hold on, this could take me days.
Well, Marty, don't you have the file that you can open it up?
If I go search for it, if you have it, it's easier.
Okay, all right, then make me, well, I've never tried to share it, but I'll try.
Okay, where do I go? I go to participants. I go to,
Dan, do you want to give him some advice on that? I don't know.
Or just, yeah, just participants and then you go make co-host.
I'm doing that. Okay,
Yep,
you and
there
I
you go.
co-host. While David is working on that.
Yes,
the-
great. Thank you, Dan. David,
Is it
sorry.
open? Okay. All right,
You
let
can make
me,
it bigger.
yeah, let me try that. This is pretty cool. This is the first time I've ever shared.
That's all applaud.
Okay. Everybody see it well?
Yes,
Raise it a little bit.
What, a little bit?
Raise it. We can focus on the green part. Okay, even make that a little bigger. It's,
Oh,
okay, leave it.
okay.
The issue before us, my email suggested how I'd like to approach this. I open the floor to anyone who has comments or thoughts they'd like to share at this. But I believe there's no emergency here. In order to change the bylaws, it takes at least 2 months of board activity. And I don't think, or my impression is, unless you want to correct me, that this is not going to impact anything until next September. So there's no emergency. So I'm suggesting is that, again, A, anyone who wants to speak to it certainly is welcome to. B, that we all go home and read this and think about the implications and suggestions we might make personally, add to the conversation. And C, after we've come back next month, we can decide on what action we wish to pursue. So the first A is, anyone wish to comment?
So
Aside
Marty,
from
it's
Ken-
Dan. So Marty,
Dan,
it's
go
Dan. I agree that this is something that we should think about and give some time and thought to. I mean, my gut instinct on this is, you know, quite frankly, it's a decision for the board in some form or manner with some sort of suggestion from our committee to the board, assuming it needs to go. I don't really know where I am on the issue right now. The only thing I would say is in terms of nothing before next September, I think that ultimately determines or is decided by what the board chooses to do here. but I guess I do agree. We should give this some time and thought.
Okay, my suggestion,
That's all I have to say.
my comment on September is that until whatever we decide to do, if a resolution goes through to amend the bylaws, that'll take 2-3 months right there.
Yep.
And it will not have impact until the next time the committees are created, which would be next September.
Unless
Well,
the
that's
board
my
chose
thought.
to make it retroactive, which I guess would be my point. It always it depends on what the board decides in the circumstance. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
The
Depends on
recommendation.
what the board decides.
Okay.
Yeah, it's also possible that at some point during the year, someone could look at education, libraries and cultural affairs and say, you know, a board chair or committee chair like Sylvia could look at it and say, oh, you know, we don't need 10 people or land use, well, not land use, that's different. And, you know, it could come up during the year, but I agree, it's not something that's an emergency.
Any other thoughts? Amelia?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I agree. It's not an emergency. Nothing really is an emergency other than the gigantic construction project, but probably, unfortunately, that ship has sailed. But it is a matter of if a person was explicitly singled out to be excluded from a committee where that person wanted to participate with volunteering efforts and equal right of participation. A complaint could be submitted, a complaint of related to discrimination. And in a way, this is where it's coming from, as an attempt to prevent that situation and to have the board address this in a systemic and explicit way. So this is where it's coming from. Obviously, somebody feels fairly strong about it to have taken the time to open it up explicitly in exec, bring it to your attention in the appropriate committee, which is this one. I understand that September is a busy month. Having said that, it's a fairly simple one sentence suggestion suggesting an equity system where 2 names or as many names as needed are picked from a hat. I am willing to let it go for a month, but no more than that, because this is a simple decision. And if again, I don't want, how to say, it's the last of the intent here to submit a discrimination complaint on a matter that could be just, frankly, I don't even know why this was necessary. This action from the chair was necessary, meaning endorsing a request from a committee chair to exclude somebody, like deliberately and giving no cause, right? Because this was not section 6. This is, I'm deciding to limit the size and I'm deciding to exclude the person I had decided to exclude before, right? So I don't want to submit a complaint for discrimination, for being explicitly singled out from joining a committee, but it is something that should be addressed. It is a matter of equity. I will continue pursuing it in SCREE and all others. I'm in agreement of giving, how to say, of allowing more time because out of sheer respect for your time as the law, rules and ethics committee. But I am explicitly asking Martin to you as chair to how to say, to take a position on it at the October meeting. Is this acceptable to the committee?
I am not offering a position either way, other than, as has been echoed from what I said, I think everyone should be thinking about this, and it'll be placed on our next meeting's agenda when people have a chance
Great.
to,
Yes.
will have had the chance to think about it. And as you pointed out, and I would have said it, but you pointed it out, the issue before us is not a committee, a chair, a specific
Yes.
resolution telling a chair, a specific chair what to do. It's a general overview as to where the community board moves from here. And so again, it's something requiring a little percolation before we decide that it's coffee or not coffee.
Thank you, thank you. I'm
So-
accepting that suggestion of having it on the October agenda.
Mhm.
I will also remove the 2 paragraphs that may be overly specific, even though I'm now secretly glad I provided those to you, because I do wish you to know that there are written communications that pertain to this situation. But I will remove 2 of the whereases and resubmit this to you for the agenda in October. Is that okay?
Fine,
Thank you.
thank you. So that pretty much takes care of our agenda, except for one
Yep.
item I need to bring to your attention. If anyone has looked, speaking of October, our next meeting is scheduled for, I think, the 12th, which happens to be indigenous, I'll get it.
Yep, indigenous, right? Indigenous Peoples'
Whatever
Day.
that Dan said, that's one, yes. Columbus Day is 2, and the first day of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot is 3. That date needs to be changed, and I have not gotten an alternate date yet from the board office. So as soon as I have that date, I will share it. And then we'll have our meeting. So I put down October 12th, but that's not going to take place on that day. Is there any other new business anyone would like
Nope.
to raise? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Steve has made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second,
All right. Anybody opposed, wants to stay on overnight? There being no objection, the meeting is adjourned. I thank you all. Wish you all a great new year in the context of September, but as long as I'm at it, a new year in general, the Jewish New Year, but it's a refreshing time, a new time for everybody, I hope. So good health to all. Good seeing you all. And next time, I want to get too close, but I'll be able to touch you all.
We're looking forward to the coffee and donuts.
My pleasure to bring it. Take care all.
good night, Marty.
Good night.
Good
And
night.
I thank you.